I was standing over a toilet and I had just emptied the bottle of hydrocodone in the toilet. And that's the day I realized I was broken. Welcome back to Uncivilized Rebirth. I'm glad you're here. This is a place where I share my stories, the tools I used, and the path that I forged to remake myself. And that's in hopes to help other people. And I hope you like and subscribe because that helps the channel grow and help the content reach the people that I want it to reach. So we're going to go back in time, back to 2017. And I was driving in my minivan and I was going to the gym because I was still broken from transverse myelitis. I was going every day, doing some air squats, doing little weights to try to get my shoulders stronger. And I was also doing OT and PT. I was weak and just very frail. I had not been this version of me in many, many years. I had just come out of the hospital for months of doing rehabilitation work for walking. And then that was several weeks. And then several months just hospital ridden or bedridden. And the doctors trying to find out what was wrong with me, which was transverse myelitis. So here I am back home, like a year later, year and a half later, after all of that was going on. And I'm driving to the gym, and I can barely breathe. And I'm trying to breathe harder, but my diaphragm is being controlled by something else, and my breathing is so shallow it scared me. And I knew exactly why it was. I'd been taking hydrocodone about 3 or 4 times a day, with 2 pills, not just one. And I was staying messed up all day long. And I knew something had to change. So as soon as I got back home, I flushed them down the toilet and I called my wife in the bathroom and I was crying and I told her how much I'd been taking. And it snuck up on me. They had sent home this bottle of 180 hydrocodone with me, with no directives on how to take it. And yeah, I was in a lot of pain, and so I took it, but I took too much. And I didn't realize why I was taking it. It wasn't just for the pain. It was because I had been so torn up on the inside and broken over the past year or so from that experience. It wasn't only transverse myelitis, being discharged from the military. Also, I had family trauma, family heartache that came up from this time. So it was loss of walking, learning to walk again, loss of uniform, loss of family, what's the word I would use? Being thrown out into the wind after being broken. I had traumatic memories come back up also that were repressed during this time. Because basically, I'm kind of like mapping my brokenness here for you. My shell of a soldier had to be broken down so severely because I had all these coping mechanisms throughout my life to cover up the broken little boy inside, that it took this extreme disease to dig deep enough to get down to the root cause of why I was the way I was on the inside, broken. So flushing those pills was symbolic. Like, I'm not doing this. This is dangerous. And I started back to counseling. I started searching for meaning. I'm listening to Jordan Peterson, Maps of Meaning. He had these great lectures about how people carry invisible dragons and it goes everywhere with them and it affects their life. And as metaphor for these traumas from our childhood. Listening to Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. Then I started listening to this guru out of India, Sadhguru. Some people don't like him, some people do, but he has a lot of wisdom to share. And I started meditating, and I would find these moments of peace and clarity But then I would snap back into my mind. It's like, oh, couldn't escape that. So I started that journey of like figuring out like what was the answer? What was the solution? And I started asking myself kind of like, who am I? Like, and what does that mean? And I kind of started realizing that my identities had been built from religion, from conservatism, from the military. And I tried to fill these roles. And those roles had all these standards that are impossible. Like, you're eventually going to not live up to them. And then along comes with that like shame, blame, and judgment, or just this internal dialogue of, yet I've failed again. And these were part of my identity, part of who I thought I was. And I broke down to the core of all this eventually. It wasn't the right question of who am I? That was a good start. But it was the realization that I never created who I was. I was always trying to play the role of these other systems or for these systems. And that was being inauthentic to who I was. And even going back to a child, it wasn't me. It was me performing to keep these adults happy so they wouldn't abuse me, hopefully. And so it was masking, basically. It's like, I can't be who I am. I got to act this certain way. Maybe I'll fit in here. Maybe I'll fit in there. And yes, the military gave me a home. It was an amazing escape from where I came from. But it wasn't me. It was an ego I adapted or adopted. So that led me down the trail. And it took several more years to really start to understand that I could create who I was or create who I wanted to be. And in doing that, making myself my own creation, nothing externally could break me internally. They couldn't pull away these pillars of identity. So in saying that, if you've been through something that has broken you or your identity has been ripped away and you feel lost, I want you to ask yourself, who am I? That's a good place to start. And then throw on this concept. Who created my identity? What is my identity based on? And have I ever sat down and created my character? And when you do that, you start shifting the power dynamic of you becoming autonomous. And the outside world doesn't have any more effect on you. And there's more inner work to do there, but this is just hopefully, in those board games where you get to skip a few spaces, like hopefully these things I'm telling you will help you skip a few spaces in your journey. Roadhouse, Spiritual Hard.